Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and the good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful August the 26th, 2020. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we're dealing with the difficult mental and social impacts that continue to plague us here in America. But I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders, for the admirable job that you do every day, staying safe and staying strong.
They stay safe, they stay strong. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love pausing, Big C, but I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. As people call that hotline, they'll realize it's not just for veterans. They can help anybody. Paul George can attest to that. I'll make sure we do it as much as possible. Big C, why is it so important to you?
Well, Charlton, as we address the issue on a daily basis throughout our shows on the veteran suicide in America, that we lose some 22 veterans a day. But I was doing some research, Charlton, and I found out numbers that are even more horrific than that. Last year in America, 47,000 Americans committed suicide. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is there to help everybody. I know we talk about the veterans, but we look out for all American citizens when we think about that. But 47,000 Americans have committed suicide in America in 2019. And during this pandemic and lockdown, Charlton, the numbers are even more exponential and have risen here in 2020. And our administration doesn't give a damn about American lives. As you know, they avoid talking about it at all costs. I heard today where the administration said we're moving on from the pandemic and going on to the next thing. So they've turned their back on the pandemic in America. And if they turn their back on the pandemic, then they've turned their back on veterans and suicide amongst American citizens. But we're not going to take that flight, Charlton. We're always going to make people aware that the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number exists.
Very well said. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can hopefully get some help. It's a real good number just to know, let people know if they're going through issues. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate brokers and agents all over this country. Help put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships are doing it, and sports teams are doing it too when they're not on the pause. Let TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. For those of you looking for opportunities in real estate, just go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can see about opportunities there. Man, so much is going on in the world of sports, in the world of life. Another, I guess it's called the Republican National Convention. It could be called the Republican National Fear Convention, because all they talk about is fear and keeping people of color out of their neighborhoods. That's Donald Trump. But I want to just get your thoughts today. NBA, decided that they were going to do the pause on basketball, and I'm proud of men who are conscientious. I am so proud of men who do not shut up and dribble. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is the plight of America when you got unarmed black men being killed by white men. You know, what's the tipping point in America? When will white people decide that it's not right to just walk up and down the street and kill black people? There was an incident last night in Kosh, Wisconsin, Charlton, where a white guy walking along with a long rifle, passing police over and over again. They didn't stop him. They didn't pull their guns on him.
I saw that.
It's okay for a white person to walk down the street in America, Charlton, and brandish a gun and decide to kill black people. He killed 2 black men last night, Charlton. And when the police went to get him, Charlton, they didn't pull their gun. They didn't shoot him.
They didn't shoot
him.
him.
They peacefully let him surrender, to take him into custody. Only if blacks were able to get that treatment. And that's the reason for the NBA. This talk has been going on a couple days, Charlton. If you look back at our show on Monday, and I was very animated when we opened the show about my feelings about the shooting in Wisconsin and my thoughts of what players should do. And I am glad that the NBA players took this stance. But I'm disappointed also, Charlton, because the NBA players are just millionaires. The guys that they work for are billionaires. And those billionaires have personal relationships with the lawmakers of this country, our congressmen, our senators, our presidents. They have personal relationships with these people. And we keep calling on these professional athletes to make a change in America, Charlton. They can't. They don't sit down at the table with the people who make the change. They're not sitting down with the lawmakers to make the change. The owners do. And if we're going to see a change in America, Charlton, it has to come from the owners of Major League Baseball, the NHL, the NBA, and the NFL, not the players. Stop calling on the players to say to make the change because they're not the ones with the political clout.
Yeah, I say that's true. I also say the more the merrier. That gentleman, I won't even call him a gentleman, the young white guy, 17-year-old, been charged with homicide after he murdered 2 people and another seriously wounded by gunfire during overnight protests. Now, Donald Trump's administration, you'll hear the Republican convention, they'll call them thugs and predators. That's what they call protesters, thugs and predators. But this guy's white, and he had a long rifle gun, and looked like it could have been a machine gun, depending on what angle you saw. And there were several other white citizens that were walking around with long-barreled guns. And law enforcement saw them because they were walking up around police officers, and not one of them was arrested, not one of them was tased, not one of them was called a terrorist. They were just saying, hey, we're here just to protect property. And that's the thing that Donald Trump calls a terrorist, an act of terrorism when people peacefully protest. But nothing said about white guys walking around with shotguns. I say every black man should have a gun. I really do believe that. Black women too. And if that shows anything, people keep saying, how do we stop this? The white guys just showed you. Start walking around with the guns, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you're not going to allow black people to walk up and down the street with guns, Charlton. They shot a man 7 times in the back in Milwaukee for allegedly having a knife. If a knife gets you shot 7 times, Charlton, imagine how many times a gun will get you shot. But we're seeing this over and over, that white people can go out and kill black Americans, Charlton, and they're peacefully taken away. It's okay. This is nothing new. We see this all the time. It's very frustrating. I know we talk about sports and how sports galvanizes people. Maybe the athletes realize that the galvanizing from sports also needs to bring the galvanizing of politics together. And if we're not going to go out and deal with this minstrel show anymore, we're not going to go out and play these games in front of you. We're not going to go out and entertain you. We're going to let you sit at home and be depressed, like black men are depressed, being scared to go out of their own house, worried about when their children leave their house, what potentially can happen to them. White people don't do that, Charlton. They don't sit there and sit down with their kids when they're leaving the house, talking to them about how to be safe and how to survive. It only happens in one part of America, black America, Charlton, and it's gone on too damn long in this country. Every time you turn around, you thought you had enough with George Floyd. No, there's been multiple killings since George Floyd. And they said, when is it going to stop? When is it going to stop? When the white people make it stop, Charlton. They can't keep asking us as black men, how do we feel about the plight of America and how things are going? They have to tell us why they keep doing it.
Well, I think if we look at what happened, there was a police complaint a police complaint filed by the police described him as a fugitive, saying that he'd been charged with homicide in Wisconsin, and that they, quote unquote, he fled with the intent to avoid prosecution for that offense. I don't know if that man was fleeing with the attempt to avoid prosecution. When he was approaching police cars, he didn't flee. They did nothing to him. That's not fleeing. Fleeing is when you run. This guy didn't even flee. He walked around with his hands up in the air. I mean, from what I saw in the videotape, and I'm sure they'll say the videotape is going to speak different things to different people. But I am, it's one thing to say our thoughts and prayers, but I'm going to say this again, and I know people may or may not agree, and I don't care if people agree, but we say, what's the solution? You have a president of the United States. His name is Donald Trump. And he said when you arrest them, rough them up. But those officers did not listen to that when that white man had shot 2 people and was walking toward police officers, and they did nothing. Big C, your thoughts?
But do you think that Donald Trump is the cause of racism in America? Donald Trump is just a product of racism in America. Donald Trump is not the guy pulling the trigger. Regardless of the words that he used, and I understand that words are powerful when they come from the Oval Office, but you think since Donald Trump became president, this is when white people started shooting black people in America? When they started hanging black people in America, Charlton? No, don't use Donald Trump as an excuse. Donald Trump is just a facilitator. He is not the excuse for white behavior in America. And even after he's gone for office, he won't be the excuse for white behavior in America. He is just a donkey on the wall that you're trying to pin the tail on right now. But white police have been killing black Americans, Charlton. Donald Trump wasn't the president in the 60s. He wasn't the president in the 50s. He wasn't the president in the 70s. White police officers were still killing black men, Charlton. He wasn't the president when Rodney King got the crap beat out of him in L.A. So we can't blame this on Donald Trump. We blame this on the white leadership of America. Call the politicians, Charlton, those guys who sit in the Senate, who would not pass any anti-gun laws in America. They're advocates of that. So when you sit up in Charlton and you see the average white person over 50 years old in America, they grew up in racism. They understand what racism means. They understand how pitiful, how bitter it is, and how hurtful it is to cultures, Charlton, because they still utilize it. As we see white people marching today, Charlton, these are the young white people that are under 25 years of age that did not grow up in that, and they're starting to separate themselves from their culture and from their family in this debate. They say, you can't lie about this anymore because we can see it on our phone what's actually happening. We don't have to sit there and you tell us a story.
Yeah, I saw, and I do take issue with you on that. I think you can blame the person in charge, and that is Donald Trump. And to not look at him as the dog whistleblower, I think is highly misunderstanding. Melania Trump, she did speak about trusting her husband at the Republican National Convention last night out in the Rose Garden at the White House of all places. There was no mention of the birtherism that she also participated in. She could have said, me too. She participated in that hatred, the racial profiling. They never talked about that. Police brutality, they never discussed that. And they even say racism does not exist. They had a couple of black guys smiling saying, I'm okay. There's nothing wrong with racism in this country. And she never talked about admonishing her husband from when he said, when you arrest them, rough them up. And she never looked him in the eye. But that's everybody already knows that. I want to get on something that made me feel, I love what Doc Rivers said last night after the game. And as an African-American man growing up around my parents and grandparents, I heard these conversations when I was a little boy. It's one of the reasons my family left the South. They left the Jim Crow South, Big C. But NBA basketball championship coach Doc Rivers, when he talked about racial injustice, and this is for Donald Trump and his minions to hear, and he talked about the fear after another police officer, a white guy, shot a black man 7 times. Like, I'm going to do what happened. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 times. And people say, well, we just need to talk about it more. There's nothing to talk about. There has to be legislation. Give me your feelings on Doc Rivers really being the only coach. I mean, there's a couple others, but the only one that really went into the emotion of how it's painful when other coaches say something about it, but not to the level that he did. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you have to look at what Doc Rivers has had to deal with, Charlton. back in 2014 when Donald Sterling made his statements and Adam Silver banned him from life from participating with the NBA. Doc Rivers had to take over that team and be the liaison for everything, for management and the players, Joe.
Yeah.
And he was the guy that was thrust in the middle of it. And so he knew how racism changed things in a heartbeat.
Yep.
Doc Rivers' dad was a cop for 30 years, Sean, for 30 years as a law enforcement officer. So Doc Rivers understands and respects police officers. But his dad was an honest cop, a fair cop.
Yeah.
There's a difference. All cops are not bad, but a whole lot of them are bad.
Yeah.
And we got to stop getting the ones who cover for the ones who are bad. That's what Doc Rivers was addressing. You just can't be a black man in America. You cannot have that ease of mind of just being a man. You have to struggle with every aspect of your life when you're a black man in America. And this is what Doc Rivers was telling us. As a father, you got to be worried about your children's moves, especially when they become adults. You have to worry about your children and the stress that put on you every day. And here's Doc overseeing a bunch of millionaires that he also has to be worried about, thinking about them as his children, because they're in the direction of the police, Jonathan. You're a black man, so you're automatically guilty. There's something wrong with you. Why do white people spend so much time hating black people in America? For 400 years, no one has explained that. Why have white people spent so much time hating black people in America? That's what Doc Rivers were addressing. I remember several years ago when my dad passed away, and he had a military service. When they want to talk about black people are against the military. And those officers, when they folded his flag and told the family, thank you for your service, about my dad after he had passed away, was that a man that was hateful in America? Was that a man that defended America when many white men would not volunteer for service? My dad volunteered. He wasn't drafted. He volunteered.
Yeah.
And so many white people would not go do what my dad did for America. So when white people keep hating black people, look at all these black men that have volunteered since the Civil War, World War I, the Spanish-American War, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War. Black Americans volunteered to save your white butt, and yet you want to kill us walking down your street.
I want to ask, and again, I've talked to so many people, black and white, about what's going on, and I really am proud of the black community, and I'm proud of what we do with the show, because things that we talk about have just been coming true. It's amazing how there was so much pushback on it. Even when we started our own show, we would call you blanky N-word and you uppity N-word and you blippity blip N-word, and I mean, not to our face, but it was in a text and sent to other people. So I understand how people got to hold their head up no matter what. But I also ask, America, it's so important. Register to vote. Text the word vote 26797. Text the word vote to 26797 and register. Text all your friends. Tell them Big C and the NFL said vote, and make this the biggest vote in the history of the universe. And I'm saying vote against hatred. I know you said, I took issue with something you said the other day because you defended Herschel Walker, saying, well, Donald Trump made Herschel Walker rich. There's a lot of people who give people money to shut up. So what does Herschel Walker say about black men being gunned down? Would Herschel Walker tell Doc Rivers to shut up because Donald Trump gave him some money? Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, look around the country and see how many rich black athletes, former rich black athletes there are. How many of them have stood up and advocated, said, no, I am not going to play. I'm going to turn my income over because of the racial injustice that's going on. Herschel Walker is just a sliver. We can point our finger at one individual, two individuals, Herschel Walker, Donald Trump. They are not the totality of the problem. Donald Trump is not out there pulling the gun. Herschel Walker is not out there running up and down the street away from police officers, Charlton. It's the white police officers that are doing the damage. And they're given the power by our politicians, Charlton, not by the president, but by our governors, our senators, our congresspeople. They have given these white police officers autonomy. They have police immunity against being prosecuted for killing black people. And they don't have to be accountable. So I don't want to point the finger at one person who just showed up and say, okay, he's the cause. Because how long has Mitch McConnell been the Speaker of the House, Charlton? He's been in the Senate almost 30 years. He hasn't passed legislation for anti-hate crimes in America, Charlton. He hasn't passed legislation for anti-hanging bills in America, Charlton. Mitch McConnell, as well as his cronies in the Senate, have advocated it. Donald Trump is their pawn as much as he's their pawn. So when you sit there and say Donald Trump, the Senate, when we don't have legislation, Charlton, for those 45 million Americans that lost their unemployment at the end of July, is because Mitch McConnell said they're not worth the money. It wasn't Donald Trump. It was Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell is the same person who will not pass any anti-gun legislation through the Senate. He's been there almost 30 years. Donald Trump just showed up. Mitch McConnell's been there 10 times longer than Donald Trump in the Senate. And he is the leader of the Senate. And yet he won't let any anti-discrimination legislation through his Senate. So when we want to point the finger at who you need to point the finger at, it's not just Donald Trump, who was the pawn, who was there for a minimal time. Mitch McConnell's been there almost 30 years, and he's held his legislation in check.
Yeah, I mean, it's all of them. I believe the more the merrier, Big C. I want to also congratulate a woman, and I just opposed this woman, Jeannie Buss, to the co-owner of the Atlanta Dream, I think Kelly Loeffler, who said that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group. I wonder what Kelly Loeffler think of that white man that walked down the street and murdered 2 people with a gun, and police did nothing. They did nothing to him.
She said that only white people should be able to carry guns and protest.
Yeah.
So she did what he advocated for. This is why I talk about white people advocating for this, Charlton. She's a United States senator. She advocated that only white people should be able to carry guns in a protest situation. And that's what she got last night. She preached that white people should be able to do this, and the white guy did what she said and went out and murdered a couple of black people, Charlton. So as we look at this perpetuating, continuating itself, think about the owner of the Milwaukee Bucks, who stood behind his players. Malcolm Brown last year, when he was beat up by the police outside a convenience store at 2 o'clock in the morning, Charlton, getting some cough syrup, because he double parked at 2 o'clock in the morning in Milwaukee in January. Ain't nobody outside.
Yeah.
He happened to go get some cough syrup. But the police tased him and beat him up in the parking lot.
Yep.
You think about this situation in Kosher, Wisconsin, that's 40 miles away from where the Milwaukee Bucks play. You got to understand that the owner of the Milwaukee Bucks had brought the Democratic convention to Milwaukee. He is a starch Democratic proponent of Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And so he stood behind his players today when they said, and as a matter of fact, they made the decision last night. They started mulling it over and talked with him, the son,
Yeah.
who is the president, vice president of the organization, telling them what their thoughts were. They backed their players 100%. So when you want to talk about owners taking a leadership role, we haven't heard a damn thing from Jerry Jones in months. He's quiet in this harsh time. He has the biggest mouth of all owners, but the owners of the Milwaukee Bucks stood behind their players last night and said, whatever you want to do, we're behind you 100%. And I applaud them for that. And I also applaud the Milwaukee Brewers, the baseball team. They canceled their games today, said we're not going to play either in light of this injustice that's going on.
Yeah. I really wish you would stop thinking that Jerry Jones is anything other than what he is. His act of silence speaks volumes. I do want to say what Jeannie Buss tweeted out with the L.A. Lakers. She was excited to see them play, hopefully close out the series tonight against their opponent. But she stands behind the players today and always after more than 400 years. There's a white woman saying that, someone who obviously reads a book. Now, this is where, I know you say don't get on Herschel Walker, but he's just someone like a lot of guys that I'm tired of. After more than 400 years of cruelty, racism, and injustice, we all need to work together to say enough is enough. And it's amazing. I know Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, maybe he doesn't see that a white man walked down the road with a gun, a long barrel gun, either a semi-automatic rifle or whatever it was. It was long barreled, and it had multiple clips. And he was walking in front of police, and they were avoiding him. They tried to avoid him. He had a gun, but there were several other white men out there too. So when POTUS, and they talk about the fear, they're telling white women, don't let these black guys move into your neighborhood because they're going to drive down your property values and miscegenate with your girlfriends and your wives. That's just dog whistle. And Tim Scott, they say they're going to support him anyway. I mean, I felt so bad, Herschel Walker. He looked like he was just like, I just want to support this guy. He's been my friend all these years. Like, read a book, please. And I'm just proud of Jeannie Buss and some of the other owners coming out there. So please, Big C, quit saying you're waiting to hear from Jerry Jones. He's already told you how he feels, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, no, I'm not waiting for Jerry Jones. I just say it's quite ironic that you don't hear from Jerry Jones.
No, it's not ironic.
The times that we have in America, and Jerry Jones has said, he will fire people if they kneel for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm waiting for Dak Prescott to take a knee and to do it.
All of them.
That's what I want to happen. Dak Prescott take a knee, Ezekiel Elliott take a knee. Several of the key African-American players in that lineup take a knee and say, okay, do what you got to do. But as we sit around and we can't point fingers at single individuals. I'm not going to point out Herschel Walker. I'm not going to point out Donald Trump. I'm going to point out the United States Senate, where we got 98 white people in the United States Senate. 98 white people, Charlton, that control the laws of the land, not lawyers in the courtroom. Those 98 white senators in America dictate whether you live or die. Who lives, who tells your story. That's what they do. When they don't pass laws to protect black people in America, and never has felt that it's their duty to pass laws to protect black people. Donald Trump will be gone either this year or in 4 years. Those white senators will still be there. And until they start passing laws to protect black people in America, we're going to have this same injustice continue on.
Well, I think Donald Trump will be gone. November 3rd will be voted out of office by even the white Americans, even the ones who don't like black Americans because they've been raised not to. But I think most of them even saw their own white siblings and brethren being treated with vicious dogs, ominous weapons, tear gas. They were roughed up at the White House, and Donald Trump called for the roughing up of them. I mean, you got guys like Lamar Alexander out of Tennessee. You have Tammy Baldwin out of Wisconsin, Jim Bersaro out of Wyoming, Michael Bennett out of Colorado, Marsha Blackburn out of Tennessee, Richard Blumenthal out of Connecticut. There's just so many of them. Roy Blunt out of Missouri. There's a lot of them.
But why do white people hate black people so much in America, Charlton? That's the question that always.
I think that's a blanket statement.
Why do white people? The oppression of black people in America, Charlton, has come from white people. Ever since they've been in this country. Just because you have a few black millionaires running around, everybody's supposed to think, well, it's okay. They're in the entertainment industry. Yes, they're in the private sector also. But because you got a few black millionaires, it allows you to hate the rest of black America and oppress the rest of black America. So why is there's so much vitriol towards black America from white society, Charles?
Well, I think if we're going to be just, words matter too. And last time I was in the court, the judge said, everybody rise. He said, everybody. And when we use that same term to indict a whole group of people, I think we're unjust. When the judge calls someone to take the stand, he doesn't say everybody take the stand, or she doesn't say it. They call for the person that's going to testify to take the stand. And I think we got to start doing that too. And I'm gonna take you up on something, because Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, since 2015, you have John Thune since I think 2019. We have Vice President Mike Pence. There's Chuck Grassley, and there's other people too we got to really get on that too, because I really want to talk to our lawmakers before we come up on the Big C pause. Really, Big C, it's about lawmakers making change. Everybody's going through this frustration and feeling upset, like Doc Rivers talked about, and you've talked about it many years, so have I. But we're not lawyers, we're not senators, we're not congressmen. I would love to see, and you're going to start seeing this more too. You're going to see more sports shows. You're going to see CNN. They're going to bring in more senators and congressmen. Whether they tell the truth or not, I don't know. We're going to take the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. And when we come back, we're just going to do some real talk. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps that you can follow Big C Sports on, and I really appreciate it. I want to take a little footnote here. I know people that are you're down south, but I know some people personally that are in the Louisiana area, in the state of Louisiana. They have Hurricane Laura expected to hit the Gulf Coast. They're talking about 20 feet storm surge. half of the city of Lake Charles, Louisiana, they're said could be underwater. That's near Interstate 10. And I'm just saying to people, please get to safety. Wind gusts are expected to be between 145 to 175 miles per hour. I know we have fires here in California. It's affecting millions of people. But I really hope, Big C, that people can heed the warnings and get their families as safe. It's bigger than anything else. I think they're saying it's as big as any storm they've ever seen hit that region of the country, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the governor said this storm was a threat to life. And so you needed to hear the warnings of the governor of the state of Louisiana. Don't sit around thinking that you're going to hold on to something in a house when you got to have storm surges as high as 20 feet, Charlton. We're talking about surges that will collapse and take away buildings. If people thought Katrina was bad, this is expected to be way worse than Katrina. So hear the warning of the scientists, the meteorologists, Charlton, the governor. Leave your home, get to safe ground.
Yeah, get to safe ground. All we can do is implore you to do that. Don't pretend it's not real. I want to touch on something, and I'm very proud of this. I mean, it's like we should be billionaires owning sports teams, Big C. I really mean that. So many things we talk about coming true, and God should know that, whatever that makes sense. Paul George, he's been struggling in playing in games lately. He's a good player out of Fresno State, grew up in Southern California, down near Lancaster, Bakersfield area. And with the Clippers, he was struggling. He was saying he was dealing with anxiety. I know Kevin Love talked about it a couple of years ago with the Cleveland Cavaliers, but Paul George said he was dealing with anxiety. We tell everyone, call that crisis hotline. It's not just for veterans. We give it out since 2018. When players start saying that I'm dealing with anxiety, that I don't really know what to do, yeah, I'm a multimillionaire, but I got issues too. I was telling you before I throw it to you, when I was a young boy growing up, the news would always say, it's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Well, these athletes, they have families too, and they don't really know where they are when the storms are happening the way they are and the violence is happening. And all you hear out of the president and the Republican convention is keep those black people out of our neighborhood. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the anxiety of being locked away. This is what these players in the bubble are feeling. They're feeling like they're locked down, even though they can leave whenever they want, but they have an obligation and a commitment is how they look at it as professional men. But the pressures, when you think about where we are with COVID-19 and a lot of situations where people are being locked down, that's a lot of mental pressure and anxiety. And when you see what's going on in the streets of America, Charlton, as black people are being pillaged, and most of these players are black, the stress and pressures of that when you have young children at home, are your children safe? You're thinking about, I'm out here entertaining people, playing a damn sport. But what are my children doing? Is somebody going to barrage on my house? My wife carrying my children somewhere. Is she going to be attacked like what I witnessed on television in the streets? These things concern these players, Charlton. So life is bigger than sports. I know we always talk about sports will bring people together and galvanize. Sports is a bunch of BS right now, Charlton, compared to what's going on to black people in America. You got to realize, you keep killing black people, you have nobody to play these sports. But you got to give black people a chance in America. Create better economic and educational opportunities for blacks. Give them the equal quality, what the Constitution says that it will do. But the Constitution is a bad piece of paper when it comes to black people in America.
Well, I know we're here to change it by voting, not just on the national level, but on the local and state level too. I do want to commend Paul George. When people think, oh, this guy's rich, he has no problems. I heard a song by an entertainer said, more money, more problems, and sometimes they understand what people without tens of millions of dollars don't understand. But he did say that he had been struggling due to his experiencing anxiety and depression and the inside isolation of the bubble. And so I really commend Paul George and any person that goes and gets some counseling and get some help, because we all need that. WNBA, they also have, I've been calling, my own thoughts is for more African American women to be given access to the podium, because they've been through a lot and men have been through a lot, Big C, but oftentimes they go through it just as bad because sometimes they may be in a sexist relationship, and that's just my opinion. But WNBA, they decide that they're going to play anyway, and they're going to take whatever efforts they can to bring attention to it. So, there's no right or wrong. People got to do what's in their heart. But your thoughts on women saying they're going to play anyway, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, what is the right thing to do in this situation? I understand that the men, because there's a major spotlight in America. They're the major economic engine in sports right now going on, the NBA players. But, it's just like a statement that was not made today, Charlton, by the players. And that's what I really appreciate, that they did not come out and make a statement. Keep everybody on pause with guessing.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what's the next move. The players will meet tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time with owners. We'll be in these conversations also.
Yeah.
What is the next step? Do they cancel the games tomorrow? Do they pull the plug on the rest of the season? Because now that's when the economic engine kicks in, Charlton, about hurting people beyond the NBA. When you start hurting the people who make the multi-millions of dollars, the billions of dollars out there, they're going to say, maybe this voice has legs, and maybe we should listen to it. Because the owners are billionaires, Charlton. The players are millionaires. The owners are billionaires. They deal with the senators. They deal with the congressmen. They deal with the president. The people who can change laws in the country, Charlton, the owners deal with them. They make donations to them, Charlton, to their political campaign. So it's not the players that have the political clout, Charlton. It's the owners. And when the owners speak up protecting their players about what they're not going to stand for anymore, things will change. The players can always say that we're going to forego income by not playing.
Yeah.
But until the owners have to start foregoing income because the players are not playing, and they start talking to their buddies that they play golf with, go out on the yacht with, and make political donations with, Charlton, that's when you get change in America.
Yeah, the owners obviously, but those owners, whenever they want to speak out about anything, they have lawyers that speak out against and for them. They have lawyers do the work. I really love, there was a thing when I was growing up. It was called the Million Man March. And mainstream media treated it very badly because African-American men were coming together for atonement and whatever it is that we can fix as a collective group in our own communities. And it was looked upon as these terrorists are getting on Washington. They're going to march on Washington. And they had the National Guard was ready to take action if they had to. And it was a peaceful protest. But it was looked at like, what are all these black people getting together for? What do they want? And I'll never forget that because I thought that Million Man March was a great thing. But what I would love to see, because you always call for the owners. The owners don't have any power, Big C. It's about our lawmakers. The lawmakers and the lobbyists are the ones who can make a difference. An owner can give a nice pep talk, but Jerry Jones is not because he doesn't care. He's on the side that you don't want to believe he's on. So I don't care about those guys. I care about the legislators and the governors of our counties and in our states. Those are the guys like Gavin Newsom, the governor here in California. He has to be the one that pushes for criminal justice change, Big C, not some athlete or some team owner. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when those owners donated $30 million to Donald Trump's presidential campaign, Charlton, that's part of getting things made, get done. When Woody Johnson got an appointment as an ambassador to Scotland, Charlton, because of his donations to Donald Trump, when one of the Rooneys got, an appointment to Ireland as an ambassador for his donation to Donald Trump. Don't say that owners making donations to politicians don't get laws changed, Charlton, because they do. It's called political influence, Charlton, from financial. And that's what these owners do. They have they donate more money to a political campaign than what they pay out in a player's contract. And I don't care which superstar it is on the team. So they do make the difference. Don't think that players do. They don't have that much clout, and they don't stay around long enough, Charlton, to make political change. But these owners that own these clubs are normally lifetime appointments, and it passes through the family through nepotism. And they have political insight, Charlton. They have direct access to these politicians on a local, on a state, and on a national level. So if they want some change, they can dictate this change, Charlton, by what they have, money and influence amongst other teams, Charlton, in the various states. So as you think about these things as they occur, this is what you have to look at. Don't think that players have political influence. It's the owners who have political influence. Because anytime an owner wants to get rid of a player, see you later. Ask Earl Thomas last week.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that before. Okay, so I think we chronicled a couple of weeks ago, there's about 7 NFL owners that contributed money over $1 million to Donald Trump's campaign so he could help him with saving money on taxes or whatever he's helping him with, because they think just like him. Bob Kraft is one of them that gave money to Jerry Jones is one of them also. So what's going to make you think that they don't already know what's been going on for 400 years and all of a sudden they're going to change? They're just going to wait for the smoke to clear. They're not going to team up against a guy. They already know him more than you do, Big C. Your thoughts?
I keep speaking about that, Charlton, just like you talked about Herschel Walker talking about the guy. These NFL owners are friends with him also. These are the guys, Charlton, that you have not heard from. I keep talking about it. You don't hear from these owners. The owners are not the ones speaking up. The owners are the ones being quiet. They can let the players go peacefully away. They still own the organization. They own the tools, Charlton, that everybody wants to be a part of, that professional sports club. These owners know the power that they possess, locally, statewide, and nationally, and worldwide in some situations. So these owners have all the power when it comes to the world of sports. It's not the black athletes banding together saying we're not going to play. The owner is not going to be any less off financially, Charlton, by the players not playing. They can weather any storm, whether it's on the collegiate level, whether it's on the professional level. They can weather the storm. But can they keep holding out and not affect change in politics? That's what it comes down to. The owners need to be the advocates of the communities and of the states, Charlton, and not just of their own damn greedy pocket. And stop calling on athletes to make social and injustice change. These athletes are not politicians. They don't have the clout.
I disagree with you. The only reason we're talking about this now all over the world is not because the owners have been out there protesting. It hasn't been the owners speaking up saying enough's enough. When Doc Rivers gave his speech last night, it wasn't an owner that did that. When Colin Kaepernick took a knee a couple of years ago, it wasn't the owners that said, you know what, maybe we should look at some of these guys and what they're saying. If you're going to tell me that you can get Jerry Jones, you're going to have guys like Robert Kraft and the Murrah family and the other guys that gave millions of dollars to a guy like Donald Trump that said when you arrest them, rough them up. He was talking about their players, those black athletes. He wasn't talking about some white kid walking down the street with a shotgun that murders two people. He didn't mean those guys. So you think all of a sudden all the activity that athletes have gotten attention for, they should shut up and let the owners do it? The owners are not going to do it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Charlton, you think every white owner in America can remember every black player that they have employed in America? Hell no, they can't. They keep going through them just like you go through Skittles in a candy bag.
Hey, I like
okay?
Skittles. I like Skittles.
They turn them over every year. They hire and fire. They look for the next superstar that's going to make them more money. That's what the owners in the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, hockey, they all look for that, Charlton. They look for the next budding superstar that they can hang their hat on to increase the value of their organization. Look at Dan Gilbert, owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers. When LeBron James left his franchise for Miami, his franchise lost half the value.
Yeah.
He put hate mail out for LeBron James in the newspaper.
Yeah.
That's how much he despised a black man having power to make his own decisions and work where he wanted to in America. And so when you think about these owners, what if that had been Robert Kraft instead of Doc Rivers last night? What if that had been Jerry Jones instead of Doc Rivers last night? Or Stan Kroenke instead of Doc Rivers? Making that statement last night, Charlton, if it had came from a white owner in the NFL with some passion, if it had came from one of them with some compassion about the plight of black people in America, you don't think it would have resonated in white society? I hell sure think that it would have, Charlton. They would have stood behind him and said, okay, now we see it from your perspective. But as long as it don't affect those white owners' bottom line, Charlton, as long as it doesn't come into their quote-unquote neighborhood, they're good with it.
Well, I would appreciate if they would, but I think action and inaction is more revealing of what somebody really thinks, and they don't come forward because they don't care to come forward. I still say there's black Americans practicing law. There's over 33,865 black Americans practicing law, and we're asking for decent white Americans too. We're just asking for good people. To me, I think it's about humanity, and as much as we can say we shall overcome someday, I'm tired of singing. I just want to know, and I got to take it upon myself to learn too. With all the lawyers that I talked to about this, they say, Charlton, nothing changes until you get it in front of the law. You got to get in front of Congress and the Senate, and the president has to sign it. Donald Trump would be removed from office.
That's what I keep talking. You just admitted to what I keep talking about. The Senate and the president. So why don't they have no bond bail for black people in America, low-income people in America? They put them in jail, give them a bail that they know that they can't meet, Charlton, and keep them incarcerated and force them to cut a deal. Just like you said, what I keep saying, yes, you can talk about the number of lawyers in America, but until they get in front of the Congress, the Senate, and the president, Charlton, it's not about the lawyers. You spoke about the three bodies that make a difference in America. We got 98 white senators in America, Charlton. They are the key to changing and affecting laws in America. 98 white ones. You think that they're worried about what's going on the streets of America? Hell no, because they live in those gated communities that they talk about.
Well, I believe it takes everybody. The owners, great. Players make a difference because they get society to move. But it takes all. There's no. I mean, everybody that can help. And I hope that we're going to have that change. I just
answer this question for me. Do you have a vote in the United States Senate when they call roll?
No, I don't.
Do you have a vote in the United States Congress when they call roll?
No, I don't. But neither do you. But my point is,
you say everybody. You say everybody. We don't have a seat.
Then Big C. Then Big C.
We're not in the room when it happens. Okay.
Big C.
It's who's in the room when it happens that makes a difference. Who gets invited into that room? That's what makes a difference.
Okay. I told you, lawmakers make a difference. I just said there's over 33,000 black Americans practicing law. They have access to places you don't have access to. You keep calling for the owners. I say the lawmakers got to make a difference, and these lawmakers will hear more from athletes than they will from an owner. That's like one owner for every NFL team. What's there, like 65 players? NBA, 20 players, etc. Major League Baseball, 40-something players. The players are out there in the public. I say get everybody that wants to do right and make that happen. That's just my opinion.
Who has the biggest pocket between the players and the owners?
That's not the point, Big C.
Yes, it is. Donald Trump, prior to becoming president, Charlton, spent his life suing people, as he still has done since he's been president, because he's had deeper pockets than everybody who came after him. And so he could defend them off with money, Charlton. He would make people go broke fighting him in court.
So, Big C, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you.
So it comes down to the deeper pocket.
So have you just given up?
Have I given up? Hell no, I haven't given up. But I'm not against telling the truth, Charlton. The thing about telling the truth is that you see the problem that's ahead of you. When you avoid that problem that's ahead of you, Charlton, then maybe the landing won't be as bad. But when you want to say that what I see in front of me is not real and we can go right on through it without any obstruction, then you're fooling yourself, Charlton, to sit there. I understand the number of lawyers in America. You got to understand most of the people in the Congress and Senate was a lawyer at one time themselves. So they're very abreast of the law. Everybody around the president has some type of law credential. He doesn't. But he surrounds himself with those people, Charlton, to protect him. Just like anybody else who goes to court, you surround yourself with somebody to protect you who knows more about the law than yourself. But the going to court versus going to the House and the Senate, Charlton, is night and day. It's night and day. Going to court is not changing the laws in the House and the Senate in America, Charlton. Those people have set the laws to allow you to go to court to fight each other. So you're fighting a battle down there in the court while the laws are being affected in the House and in the Senate, Charlton. So what you do in the court is completely suing somebody in the court is not changing a law in America. Those people set up that law to allow you to sue somebody in the court.
Well, as I said, it's going to take lawmakers and talking with the governors to adjudicate change. It happens with the state level and the federal level. It has nothing to do with an owner of a sports team, but they can help too. That's just my opinion. It's going to take the law. I want to touch on something, and I love our conversation. I just don't think that the owners have as much power as you think when the governor can sign legislation. An owner can't sign legislation. NCAA college football. Texas Tech University. They had 22 players, and I think one coach tests positive for COVID-19, yet they continue to practice. They continue to put kids out there in harm's way without pay and without any insurance that helps them once they leave or lose their scholarship. Big, so your thoughts?
And when you talk about governors, the governor of Texas is saying that that's okay. It's okay to put these kids out there as lab rats. Let them catch COVID-19. it'll go away. It's just like the president today. His administration announced that they're moving on beyond COVID-19. COVID-19 is in the past. It's a dead issue as far as the administration occurs. They're moving on to other aspects of what they have planned. They are not going to be concerned about the American citizens and COVID-19. And when you think about the governor of Texas, who is a Republican, he's going to follow the guidelines of the president of the United States, just like the governor of Alabama. He's going to follow the guidelines of the president of the United States. So when the president and his administration said they have moved beyond COVID-19 and they're on to other things right now, they don't give a damn about how many Americans die. They don't give a damn about how many high school or college athletes die or get sick from COVID-19.
Yeah, but President Trump's going to be voted out of office on November 3rd if decent people rise up and vote, Big C.
But by the time he loses office, Charlton, there'll be 240,000 Americans dead from COVID-19. You can vote him out of office, Charlton, but you're not voting the disease out of office. Disease will have such a control over America by the time he leaves his administration, Charlton. COVID-19, they will have no chance of curtailing it, Charlton.
Well, everybody can pay attention to the Centers for Disease Control to find out what you can do to keep yourself safe. Listen to that POTUS is done.
The CDC today relaxed their testing protocol on COVID-19. If you've come in contact with someone with COVID-19, they will not test you just because you came in contact with COVID-19. That was from the administration, Charlton, having the CDC come out and make that statement. So when you make statements now about the CDC, they're being shackled by the administration. So the CDC is not going to test you anymore just because you came in contact with somebody with COVID-19.
Well, people still have to do the protocol to keep themselves safe and not leave it up to Donald Trump or anybody else. Leave it to the person they see in the mirror. I also, and I know they're going to play sports, and it's ironic, it's down in your neck of the woods where you love. I always used to tell you that you would brag about, Charleston, you can't believe how many people come to the games and the crowd's 100,000 fans, and it's a religion down here. And I've always thought, well, so what? ACC football, the reason that there's a drive to keep the season alive, irrespective of what's happening with COVID or other issues. You know, those players don't have health insurance once they leave those colleges, and they don't make to the pro leagues, and they're all banged up. I believe TV pays about $30 million to each member school in the ACC conference, and the only one really worth a darn lately has just been Clemson. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, it's all about money as we look at sports all the way through. And like I said about the NBA players, this is the only way that they can get attention of the owners, Charlton, is by not having television revenue come into them. I mean, to cancel the games tonight, just like the colleges in the Big Ten and the Pac-12 have canceled their seasons, Charlton. People understand the economic plight that affects those universities now. Because they're going to shut down a lot of other sports because of that. If these NBA players go beyond tomorrow night, because I see the solidarity of the players tomorrow, canceling the games tomorrow to be in unity with the games that were canceled tonight. And with this meeting that's occurring tonight, what is the grandiose move? Do they continue on playing in the bubble, or do they just pull the plug on it all? I mean, not until one of these sports organizations pulls the plug on the entire season, Charlton, will America come to understand that blacks have power. That's where the power is with blacks. It's not about lobbying. It's not about telling people to go vote. It's about something you talk about all the time. White people are scared of losing money and death. That's the only thing they're scared of. And when you take their money out of their hands and you have control of that, that's what fears them more than anything else. And so if these players do the dubious distinction of saying, we're done, now the owners will speak to the politicians.
Yeah, I was told that by my grandfather when they left the South. When they got guns to shoot back, that's when white people left them alone. When they were sitting there holding the Bible, begging and pleading, they would lynch people, and that's why my family left the South also. So with 5.8 million cases of COVID-19, people got to look at whatever they can do to stay safe. It's just important. Don't worry about what POTUS says or the Centers for Disease Control. You can Google what it takes to stay safe. I also want to just make sure I say it again before we come up on our close. America, please register to vote. Text the word VOTE to 26797. That's 26797. Text all your friends. Tell them Big C and the NFL said vote. If you don't vote now, I have nothing else to say to you. NCAA also, North Carolina State, they put sports on pause. 27 players and staff have tested positive again within that athletic program. These schools are down in the Southern Confederate States. And if you're a black athlete or a black parent, don't be like the Big Ten parents that wanted to beat up the commissioner of the Big Ten because they said we don't want to play football due to COVID-19. I hope that these players and some of the parents can understand you got 27 at North Carolina State positive cases, and they're still out there running wind sprints. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, and that's the stupidity of what we're looking at, Charlton, in these three conferences, Power 5 conferences, that will not cancel football as of yet. You know, North Carolina State moved their opening game from September 12th back to September 26th. They're going to give it a 2-week grace, you know, hoping that they can get enough players that's not testing positive for COVID-19. They had a breakout right down the street at the University of North Carolina, I believe, a week ago.
Where
yeah. They had to suspend practices with players breaking out with COVID-19.
Yeah.
This is the only thing, Charlton, that will make white people listen in America, is that black athletes said we refuse to play any longer until we can get some social and legal reform in America. Until you can make this country what you say the Constitution is all about. We the people. But we're the only people that walk around in fear. Black people are the only people who walk around with fear every day. If you're not going to make it equal for all Americans, take that thing out of the Constitution and say we the people.
Well, we have to form a more perfect union by voting. Even if people are afraid, you got to vote. That's why it's called the land of the free and the home of the brave. And I know people are frustrated, but you please don't get frustrated with voting. I want to just close out a couple more things before we close out tonight on the Big C podcast show. I really appreciate Big C. We've grown leaps and bounds. We're heard all over the world. And almost time, I'm going to say this to anybody listening. Whenever Big C Sports has talked about something over the last 5 years, everybody in the world, in fact, everyone in the universe, is having the same platform now. They're sports and politics because it's real. And I just hope people will remain real. And as I say to people, it's about humanity. It's good and bad people. And I'm asking everyone to just participate in that. I had, in the last couple of seconds before I throw it to you, I listen to a lot of Bay Area media, and there's a lot of guys that I respect, and some guys that are just dumb, and I don't know how they got a job other than they have white skin. I did hear a white host today. They call in some black guys to say, so what can we do to make a change? And some of those stations, they have no black news anchors, no black reporters, but they'll bring on some conscientious white guys and ask, what can we do to make a change? How about talk to your damn program director and have them open up the diversity carousel so the only time you interact with black Americans is not on a sports court? Big C, your thoughts?
You got to stop asking black people, what can we do to change things? Look in the mirror. If you're a white person in America, you want to know what's wrong in society, look in the mirror. Black people have not created the problems of racism and divisiveness in America. It has been a 400-year running stance in America to oppress people of color. So when you want to know what's wrong and how can you make a change, stop inviting black people on your program, asking them the questions. Ask some prominent white people, what does it take to make a change in America socially and economically?
Well, in order to ask them, they would have to have the chance to employ them. They won't give them a job, but they'll have them call in to get their knowledge. I've always thought that was just stupid. NBA Nate McMillan was fired this morning from his head coaching position with the Indiana Pacers, weeks after signing a one-year extension. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, you know, he's dealt with so many injuries in Indianapolis, and, you know, they gave him 4 years. They signed him to a one-year extension, so hopefully he'll get that money from that one-year extension on the way out the door, Charlton. But, you know, this is the life of an NBA coach. Now we got 5 positions open in the NBA for coaching carousel.
Yeah, it's all fair and love and war. People are gonna do what they got to do. I know there's a couple of more baseball teams that are talking about not pitching tonight, not opening up with the opening game pitch. But some of those programs start, you know, after our show's over. So I know the Giants were talking about that, and the Padres and several other teams are talking about not playing too. Whatever people do, make sure you stay informed, make sure you vote. And for white Americans, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, how did a white man walk down the street with a shotgun, assault rifle, shoot 2 people, and was not shot, he was not tased, and he was able to get away. And they had several other people in the same situation, and they're not called terrorists by the Republican National Convention, which you're going to hear tonight. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always ask Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble, Big C. What are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, part of the sports universe will be affected tonight in the state of Texas and Louisiana. I hope all those people are able to get out of harm's way and adhere to the warning of the National Weather Bureau, Charlton, when they tell them and the governors to leave those low-lying areas.
Yes.
But we see the attention that's given by the Republican Party, the President of the United States, as he talks about anarchy in America. He must remember that he is the president while this anarchy is going on. It's under his watch.
Yep.
No one else but Donald Trump's watch. And I want to say once again, thank you to our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay strong. Everybody in America appreciates you.
We really appreciate you. And keep talking every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.